Good morning, everybody. My name is Nareen Hashtas. I'm a social rights activist. Today, I'm presenting to you my initiative on transgender discrimination in the workplace. Through this presentation, we'll have an introduction to history, barriers to intercultural communication, a proposed solutions for our initiative, a short-term communication strategy, and a long-term communication strategy for our initiative. If we want to talk about the history of LGBTQ community, we need to go back in time till the time of the Roman Empire, where some evidence through the artwork that was presented through that time indicated that LGBTQ individuals did live through that time where the Roman Empire existed in Rome and in many other parts of the world. Even in the Holy Quran of the Muslim community, we can see that gay individuals are mentioned in Surah Prophet Lut, and gay people did exist through that time for specific reasons and specific circumstances, but till that time of history, starting from that time of history, LGBTQ community did exist, but from that time till today, they are still facing discrimination, stereotype, and bias through all the communities that they have lived through. Just to go through the history where we can define when the terms LGBTQ were used, we can see that lesbian was first used in 1732, homosexual was used in 1869, bisexual was used in 1894, and gay was used in 1955. Through the history, this community did exist. It didn't happen today. It didn't happen 5 years ago or 10 years ago. This community exists since history, since humanity did start. Having individuals between us different than us is something that we need all to understand and realize. And we can tell that still through history that remind us of stories of successful men or women who contributed to the country's development and have been treated with injustice and discrimination for being transgender or homosexual. And also, many people who are not transgender do not understand the daily struggle and hardship of those who are transgender have to go through. When you are in prison with a physical body that you don't feel that this body is your body and you want to be someone else, that the struggle that the transgender people, individuals go through. In many cases of transgender individuals, many cases reach to the point of committing suicide because they cannot live in the physical body that they don't feel it belongs to them. The number of cases presented at the Supreme Court of the United States in many states can only indicate that these individuals suffer from injustice and biases at this point. Today I'm addressing the Congress of the United States. Why? Because the Congress is the highest, there's no higher authority than the Congress of the United States to form a committee to overlook the situation of such individuals, to report the reasons why they are deprived of their fundamental rights to live in a freedom as they wish to be. And in this point, I want to recall the 14th Amendment that grant the U.S. residents the right to be treated equally with no discrimination of any kind. No discrimination of any kind that include even sex. The barriers to intercultural communication for LGBTQ community. Mostly it's around stereotype, bias, and prejudice. Acknowledging The transgender identity challenges the historically held belief that gender is defined as only male or female. In most cases, transgender individuals pay the cost of this conception with their suffering. If we want to explain stereotype a little bit, we can say it might be a positive or negative judgment by anyone against anyone. Prejudice refers to a more profound concept to the irrational dislike. Bias and prejudice or our ignorance of others can lead to isolation, vulnerability, disadvantage, and discrimination at school, at work, in store, and other services, or even where people live for transgender individuals. Our proposed solutions through this initiative to enforce the application of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1946 to include public and private sector across all states and include the different groups by the Ministry of Labor, especially to emphasize on issues of individuals of the LGBTQ community. Congress to empower human rights NGOs concerned with LGBTQ rights to enforce justice and reduce the bias and stereotypes in working place against all groups living in the United States. Research on the impact of acts of bias and stereotype at the workplace against LGBTQ individuals inside U.S. government institutions. Congress advises the media to support the proper presentation of different groups of the LGBTQ community. The short-term communication strategy start by locating a research center interested of the LGBTQ community issues and cases. Review available studies about the LGBTQ individuals and community. Define a list of main issues that LGBTQ individuals witness in working place. Identify NGOs active in the LGBTQ community fight for rights to support the efforts to implement the change and contribute into conducting the research, survey, data collection, awareness campaign, media materials at the Working Place Supreme Court and the Working Place Supreme Court cases. Initiate communication with the Congress and schedule meetings with few Congress members to address the media influence to reduce bias and stereotype to promote a more positive presentation of the LGBTQ community within media. The long-term communication strategy can aim to have the Congress to adopt a nationwide research study on the issues presented by LGBTQ individuals, rejected obtaining their benefits of services, and enforced any amendment needed to the regulations that grant LGBTQ their rights of the benefits to these services. Moreover, develop a comprehensive revision to regulations in the Health Department, Social Security, and Housing. The Ministry of Labor is to review the cases being seen in the Supreme Court of the United States of America in concern of issues facing the LGBTQ individuals in working places, and based on that to consider a revision to the hiring and firing rules and regulations and enforce regulations to all business entities on applying these rules, not to include any sexual discrimination of any kind. The Social Security to review the outcomes of the nationwide research concerning the issues of LGBTQ individuals present through the research. In short, this is a summarized presentation to my initiative, and now I'm open to any question.